What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Jay Rich, back to bring your MLB props for Tuesday, August 30th. Yesterday, Brian Bayo could not get to 4 strikeouts for us. He got to a lot of 2-strike counts, got squeezed on a few pitches, but overall, he was just a little bit too wild. Couldn't quite bring it in to get those 4 strikeouts for us. And then Carlos Rodon got wrecked. Let's just call a spade, and it was just a bad bet at the end of the day. Padres just played phenomenally. They got a lot of hits. They took him into a lot of deep counts. Wasn't even close. Wasn't even close. I know there's a lot of people who were on it, but was not a close bet. And then Jose Barrios, if you did take that bet, went under. It was a great spot, great matchup. We talked about the Cubs and why they're playing so well against right-handed pitching. They're up against another right-hander today in Kevin Gausman. But let's get into the props and talk about some more guys that we're interested in today, even though this slate is pretty tough. So right at the top, we're talking about Max Fried up against Colorado. Great spot, in my opinion. Colorado, a team that can definitely strike out a lot, and Max Fried is a pitcher who obviously can strike out a lot of batters. He's not the biggest strikeout guy, but the biggest thing is he will usually go deep into a game, very efficient, and we only need him to get about a strikeout per inning. He's at 5 right now on PrizePicks. It will probably get to 5.5. Don't love it as much at 5.5, but at 5, I think it's great. You get great value for a push at 5, and you can definitely have lots of room to go over. You see, I'm projected for 6.5. He's got all the metrics in place. Not the biggest K rate guy. You see 22%, but again, there are games where he goes very deep into those games and plays very well. 5.8 Ks over his last 5 starts. So great spot for Max Fried, in my opinion. I would definitely be playing him today. The other guy I definitely would be playing is George Kirby. You see a little bit further down, up against Detroit. A lot of things in place for Kirby to have a great game. The 30% K rate for Kirby, the 25% K rate for Detroit, and then on top of that, these swinging strike rates for both do line up pretty well. So I do like Kirby a lot at only 5.5. He only has to get to 6. He's a guy who in his last start threw 24 straight strikes, and you see that he's been playing pretty well so far. 7.2 Ks over his last 5 starts. So again, another guy who can rack up the Ks and is pretty good. And in my opinion, Detroit is a great matchup for Kirby, and definitely a guy that has massive upside like we've seen with Kirby in the past. He's a guy who can rack up strikeouts and then in great matchups can go way over in some of those matchups. So I do like George Kirby quite a bit. And the other guys, it's like, Blake Snell, I'm not loving. Andrew Heaney looks really good on paper, but the problem is that the Mets do not strike out a lot, so I'm not really trying to make that bet personally. Then you go down to Kevin Gausman, who has a line of 6 on PrizePicks. We talked about how pitchers don't even get to 6 against the Cubs, especially right-handed pitchers. He's got a shot. In my opinion, he's not probably going to go over, but he could push you with 6. If you want to take an under on Gausman, I don't hate it. We talked about the data yesterday. If you want to follow that trend again today, I don't mind it for Gausman. I'm projected for about 6.2 strikeouts. Again, he's a guy who does have massive K upside, and if the Cubs do chase, they could be in trouble. So I'm not necessarily all in on Gausman, but as I mentioned last episode when I did this, the Cubs just are not striking out against right-handed pitching. We saw that yesterday against Barrios, but Barrios is a much more inferior pitcher, in my opinion, than Gausman, especially when it comes to his whip and how many hits and walks he allows. So in my opinion, Gausman's a maybe play, but the data definitely does still support taking the under for him at 6. And then we get into Lucas Giolito and Shane Mcclanahan, my 2 biggest unders. Again, we've talked about Giolito on this before, how he just doesn't get a lot of strikeouts right now. He's not playing overly well. He does get the Royals, who the Royals are not a terrible matchup from a, are they going to blow you up perspective, but they're also not striking out under 20% over the last 7 to 14 days. So again, it's not a bet you necessarily want to take with Giolito. You don't necessarily want to take an over. You do get 6, like I mentioned with Gausman. So I do like if you're going to go under for that one. And then Mcclanahan, you have to take they're giving you 8. So if they're giving you 8, you want to take the under. The chance of him getting 9 against Miami are slim. You see what he's done over the past few starts. He's only averaging 5.6 Ks per start. On top of that, I've projected for about 7.4 because Miami is a pretty good matchup for strikeouts. You see the 26% strikeout rate and the almost 29% called swing and strike rate. So again, a good matchup for a pitcher, but Mcclanahan still has that, Cy Young level respect that he had early in the season without the results. So if I was to take anything, of course, I would take an under. I think I would probably take Mcclanahan over Giolito because I don't think he's going to get to 9. I don't. So for me and my money, I would be taking the Mcclanahan under. I'd be taking the Max Fried over, and I'm taking the George Kirby over as well. Those are just the three guys that I think are in great spots. Fried, just a great matchup. Kirby, a great matchup. And Mcclanahan, while it's a great matchup, it's a very high total. And so if you are worried about the total, right, and the matchup more so than anything else, you could go for Giolito. You could pivot to Giolito. You could pivot to Gausman. You know, those are kind of the 5 guys that I had on my radar today. Again, the only 2 guys I really like are Fried and Kirby. So if you only want to take those 2 guys for a power play, power to you. I think that's a great matchup. If you want to add a third guy, I would probably add Mcclanahan as my third. I just don't think he's getting to 9, but he might push for you. So that's kind of where I'm at with the slate today. I don't love it, so I'm not all in on it. Make sure to drop me a like and subscribe for future content. And as always, if you tail, give them hell. And if we fail, do not bail. I'll be back tomorrow with more MLB picks and strikeouts. George Kirby, Max Fried for strikeout overs, and Shane Mcclanahan today for unders. I'm out. Peace.
A lot of names that if you're not a Pirates fan, you probably don't know.
He's the closest thing we've seen to Mike Trout.
Yeah, the best team in the American League.
The Yankees have the most intimidating lineup in baseball.